Managed to read Mark's email that came out this morning?
I don't think Councillor Bolton has. I'll just send it to Councillor Bolton just now.
Ah, yes,
Thank you.
perfect. Just let her see that before we begin.
Yes, I had a quick word with Mark, so I'm reassured.
Bear with me, sorry. Just about to send her the wrong one there. That's it, sent.
Okay, I'm just waiting for it to come through. That's it.
Don't read out aloud.
No. That's fine, thank you.
Okay, if everyone's happy, we'll begin. So, welcome to those in attendance at this remote meeting of the local review body of Aberdeen City Council. Please note that the meeting will be recorded and published online for access after the meeting. You're also reminded to note that we may have members of the public and press observing today's proceedings. Can members of the local review body leave their cameras on but mute their microphones when not speaking, and all those who are not on today's meeting to just keep their cameras off and their microphones off throughout. As the local review body contains quasi-judicial business, members are reminded that they should not leave the meeting during consideration of any of these reviews. This meeting has been convened in response to 3 requests for a review of the decision taken by the appointed officer under the Council scheme of delegation. Members of the local review body have before them copies of the review documents as listed in the notice calling the meeting. We'll now ask Mr. Mazin, the Assistant Clerk, to outline the procedure to be followed in the conduct of these reviews and to take a roll call of all members present.
Thank you, Chair. Members have the procedure note which was circulated with the meeting papers and is intended to set out the wider framework within which the review process operates. The first task for the review body is to come to a decision on whether the review documents contain sufficient information for the case to be determined without further procedure, and by that it is meant without further information or representations. The regulations governing the local review process require that all matters which the applicant intends to raise in the review must be set out in or accompany the notice of review. The focus of the review should be on the basis of what was before the appointed officer when a decision was made, and only in exceptional circumstances will new or additional matters be permitted to be taken into account. The circumstances in which additional matters can be taken into account are set out in the legislation and will be addressed by the LRB's advisors where relevant. This review should take the form of a structured discussion led by the chairperson to consider the matter set out in the notice of review before you, and I would conclude by drawing your attention in particular to points 10 to 12 of the procedure note. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, turning to consideration of the first review in respect of a decision to refuse the application for the erection of a detached dwelling house at South View, Granite Hill Terrace, Aberdeen, AB228AQ, which is planning a reference 241012. We'll now hear from the planning advisor in attendance, Ms. Lucy Green, who will provide us with a brief description of the application proposal and a reminder of the reasons why the application was refused. I point out today that Ms. Green's attendance to today's meeting is to provide us with the necessary professional planning guidance because she's not been involved in the earlier consideration of any of the reviews on today's agenda. Ms. Green will not, however, be asked to express any view on the merits of the proposed developments, and in effect her role will be a neutral one involving the provision of factual information and guidance only. Ms. Green, over to you.
Thank you, convener. I'll just share my screen, and apologies, I've somehow deleted the slide with the header title, but the rest of them are there. So this is into review into proposal for a new dwelling house at Granite Hill Terrace. And the review was submitted with all the necessary information within the timescales. The applicants indicated that there were no new matters within their submissions, and also that the review may proceed without further site visits or hearings, etc. So I'll continue and give some background information before coming back for members to decide how to proceed. So I'll just go back to the location plan. So this is the site on Granite Hill Terrace. This roundabout goes down to the Pursley Bridge here, and the site's surrounded by fields with existing housing to the south. And just a bit of closer up view taken from Google Maps. And so there's 3 flats within this building, and then these are relatively recently constructed houses on the rear of the site. And this is the site in question here. It doesn't take up the full extent of that grass area, it's this portion. And again, that's taken from Google, looking from the west towards the site here. And the proposed house would sit approximately in line with the existing flatted building. So that's the site plan for it. And a closer up view. So just to cover these points, this area was approved as part of a change of use from agricultural land to garden ground, and there's landscaping approved within that area. So it's indicating a gravel driveway there. The existing shared driveway and proposals for a wall along the boundary, which would match a wall to the east. And then looking at the elevations of the proposed house. So the finishes would be slate to the roof with photovoltaic panels, grey UPVC doors and windows, fascias, soffits, barge boards and rainwater goods, granite coins and render to match the other houses. And then the 800mm rendered blockwork wall to the back of pavement that I mentioned before. So this is the elevation that would face the street, with this being the elevation next to the access driveway. And this one on the other side facing towards the outer side of the site. And from the rear, it just shows the change in levels there. I've got some cross sections on the next slide. So this is taken through the site this way with plot 3 showing just there. You can see the change in levels across the site. And that's the existing ground level shown in orange. So the note says that there would be a 2-metre space behind the house. And cross sections from the west side, so from this side. It's Granite Hill Terrace just there. This plan shows the Greenbelt designation of the site. I'll come back to the policies later. And then as covering the planning history. There have been quite a few applications on the site going back to the 2013 application for 4 houses on the wider site. So there were 2 at the front and 2 to the rear. But that wasn't implemented in that form. So then there was the change of use of the building on the street frontage to form 3 flats, separate applications for the 4 existing houses, a double garage which was refused, and that sat on the site that we're looking at today, and a retrospective approval for the land around the perimeter of the site to be incorporated into the gardens. The reasons for refusal, firstly, that the site's within the green belt and in an unsustainable location, and so would be contrary to Policy 1 in NPF4, Climate and Nature Crises, Policy 8 on green belt, Policy 9 on brownfield development, and Policy 13, Sustainable Transport. That the proposal would be large in scale and massing, and the building would be overbearing and incongruous on the site, with the design scale and massing not reflecting the character of the green belt. The development would harm the landscape character of the area and would prejudice the retention of the previously approved landscaping and amenity land to the detriment of landscape setting of the wider site. And the loss of the approved landscaping would also result in a loss of biodiversity, with no environmental enhancements proposed that would offset that, and would be therefore contrary to Greenbelt policy, design policy, policy on landscaping, the nature and climate crises, biodiversity, the green belt, and blue and green infrastructure, which covers open space. Also, that it would not be sustainable in transport terms because it's not linked by footpaths. So that would be contrary to policy T2 on sustainable transport, T3 on parking, and 13 on sustainable transport in NPF4, and 14 on design. So a summary of the applicant's case. The applicant states that the proposed house would provide supported living accommodation for a family member, that the proposal is a well-considered design that completes a cluster of housing with a high-quality streetscape, that it would result in reuse of a brownfield site and would deliver a self-build house. There was discussion of the zoning under previous local development plans, and it's also stated that the scale is modest, with a height, an overall ridge height of 7 metres, which would make it smaller than the other houses within the wider site. In terms of consultations, the roads development management team had no objection. Waste team and environmental health had no objection and no comment. And Daneston Community Council there was no response. So at this point, I will hand back to members to decide how to proceed.
Thank you very much. So we now need to consider we have sufficient information in front of us today to take a decision on the application. Members, reminder, if you do not feel you have sufficient information to take a decision, you can request that further written information be provided, hearings to be arranged, or the site visit to be undertaken. We'll quickly go around the room. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, I think I've got sufficient information to take a decision today.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, I think there's sufficient information to provided to form a decision today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor MacDonald.
Yes, I would agree with that too.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lawrence.
Hi, can I ask, is this in Ward 1? Because that is my ward.
Let's just check on that, Mr. Masson.
It's Bridge of Dawn ward. That's
Okay.
what the application says. Bridge of Dawn.
I think the
Well,
boundaries are relatively close, but I think it does fall within the Bridgetton ward.
yeah, it was just when Gainston Community Council were the only one mentioned, I was just questioning it, but okay.
No worries. Thank you very much. Are you
Okay,
happy to
so
continue?
sufficient, yeah, to carry on.
Thank you very much. I agree as well. So therefore, we'll go to the next stage. So as all members feel we have sufficient information to take a decision, we'll pass back to Ms Green, who take us through the relevant policies and considerations for this review.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to the policies. So these are the relevant policies within NPF 4. So policy 1, tackling climate and nature crises, significant weight is given to those factors and also to climate mitigation and adaptation. Policy 3 covers biodiversity and has a critical role in ensuring development will secure positive effects for biodiversity. Policy 8 on the Greenbelt has a presumption against development, and there are some exceptions within that, which this development doesn't fall within. So I think some of the exceptions include small-scale development that relates to an existing use on the site, but where it's for a new house, that would be a separate planning unit that would be creating. So that exception would generally refer to sort of extensions to houses rather than a completely new house. Policy 9 encourages development on brownfield land. Policy 13 supports active travel and public transport and development being in locations which support travel by sustainable means. And then I have a separate slide for the design policy. Policy 16 supports new homes where they are on allocated land. And in terms of policy 20, open space, the outcome to that policy advocates for communities benefiting from access to green space. So I'll just look at Greenbelt policy in a bit more detail on the next slide. So the overall policy intent is to encourage, promote and facilitate compact urban growth and use the land around town sustainably. But the policy outcome being to direct development to the right location, increase urban density and prevent unsustainable growth, protecting the character, landscape, natural setting and identity of settlements, and also relates to nature networks being supported and land managed to help tackle climate change. So as I mentioned before, but the exceptions to the presumption against development doesn't include a new standalone house unless it's a residential accommodation for a key worker where the locations are required. Also conversions of historic buildings or one-for-one replacement homes. Policy 14, as we'll be familiar with, is the 6 qualities of successful places, and those include being connected, distinctive design and context with the surroundings, sustainability, and it also states that development proposals poorly designed, detrimental to the amenity of the surrounding area, or inconsistent with the 6 qualities won't be supported. I'm moving on to the local development plan policies. Policy NE1. Again, that contains the presumption against development, with one of those being small scale related to existing activities. But as I mentioned, the house would be a standalone separate planning unit. Policy D2 on amenity, that would relate to making use of views and sunlight and privacy, open space. And it would also involve consideration of whether there's an adequate level of amenity for the existing flats and houses on the site. D4 covers landscapes and states that they should not be adversely affected by development. And it's noted in relation to this that the site was included as part of landscape screening on previous permission. Policy R2 on contaminated land states that land should be remediated, and policy R5 relates to the management of waste for new developments. Policy T2, so the site should be accessible by walking and other active travel as well as public transport. And policy T3 has parking standards. So finally, just to mention the Equality Act and the protected characteristics, which should be taken into account in terms of the impact of development on particular groups. And those are the groups that are included, including disability. However, personal circumstances are not normally a material consideration. So overall, the primacy of the development plan and all applications being determined in accordance with the policies unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And the basis for the decision in this case, first of all, in terms of the green belt, how does the proposal lie in terms of that policy and its presumption against development, and then also the impact of the proposal in terms of its siting and design on the character of the greenbelt and surrounding area. The location in terms of sustainable travel would also be an issue for consideration, and the impact on the amenity of the existing houses and flats. So does the proposal comply with the development plan as a whole, or are there material considerations weighing for and against? And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I guess the first question for myself would be in relation to some of the information that the applicant has provided. There's a mention that this originally sat within OP13 and is a brownfield site. I'm just wondering if you could sort of clarify around that point.
Yeah, in a previous development plan, I think it was the 2012 one, the site was allocated as an opportunity site. So I think it stated it was a brownfield site within the green belt, suitable for a small housing development, well screened by landscaping. So wording to that effect that I think are in the statements. So previously, yes, it was a haulage yard.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions, members? Councillor Bolton.
Thanks very much, convener. Can I just ask, in terms of the previous application that was approved and this area of land that's now been proposed for the house, was that designated as the amenity area for the flats or just as a general amenity area?
The site for the flats, I think, extended across part of this area, and then for the house to the north, plot 3, that although it didn't include this site, there was a condition requiring landscaping to be carried out on this area, the application site we're now looking at, because it has a part of a condition. So there was a plan submitted showing tree planting on there.
Can I check then? When was that condition or the application put forward and approved? It's just why the condition hasn't been followed up.
It was a 2017 application. Let me just look at it. did open it earlier, but I should maybe shut it again. So that was the plan. As for the date of the application, yeah, that was it. So initiation of development was in 2019.
So it's been there for some time.
I'm not sure when it was completed. But...
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all from me now at the moment, convener. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. I'm just going to pull up my. So my question was around the accompanying documents that we got, and it says that the planning application had a previous planning application had sought to regulise the unauthorised encroachment into the green belt of garden ground associated with the 4 houses. So I just that was a particular, that was the one from 2023. So I'm guessing I'm just trying to get in my head, a bit like Councillor Bolton, what's happened. And would it be fair to say, so there's a question mark around that, would it be fair to say that there hasn't always been a very holistic view taken on how the various plans that have come in have coalesced together, and it's been a little piecemeal in how the development has happened? Would that be a fair summary?
Yes, I think that's probably a fair summary. Yes, it's the overall plans have changed incrementally with each application coming in. That appears to be how it's.
Okay, and my second question was around, it was something that was in your initial slides, and it was something for my own. What's a gabion basket?
They're used to retain ground, so it's usually like sort of wire netting that contains rocks within it. That's used as a retaining structure.
So that's because it's been dug down in order to get the property in the on a level.
Yes, I mean, I don't think it's completely level, but yeah, the gradient's been reduced, and the gabion baskets would retain the ground behind.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cook.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I just wondered if you could talk us through in a bit more detail about the fact that while personal circumstances are not a material consideration, we nonetheless have to take into account protected characteristics under the 2010 Act. Because there seems to be a bit of a kind of clash between those.
Yes, I'll have a go at that, and I might let legal add anything that I miss. I mean, we would consider the impact of the development on those groups of people, which is slightly different to the personal circumstances of particular individual, if that makes sense. And the case officer's report goes into a fair bit of detail about why it wouldn't be advised to make it a personalised consent, so that, you know, it is an application for a house. It's not for sheltered accommodation, or, you know, so it's taking into account impact on a group as opposed to one individual. I don't know if Vicky's got anything to add to that.
Vicky, do you want to comment on that, or are you content?
No, nothing substantive to add. Obviously, the public sector equality duty is a material planning consideration when it comes to planning decision making, but it's for you as the LRB to decide what weight you apply to that.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, convener. It was to come back to the local development plan, please, Ms. Green, and there was mention in your slide of discussion of zoning under previous plans, but I just wondered, just to understand that, am I correct in thinking that what is the status in the development plan now, to be absolutely clear, of that site? Because has the full development of that site reached its full potential so far?
The status in the current development plan is that it's greenbelt. Whether it's reached its full development potential is for the LRB to consider, I guess, in this case. Previously, the houses had been approved with this area being landscaped, which was part of the decision in terms of how it fitted into the greenbelt. Whether there's capacity for further development, that's for the LRB to determine.
And just to be clear, was it because there was was there a pushing out into further greenbelt that caused the 2023 retrospective landscaping application to happen, or was that proactively done in order to tidy up things? Or I'm just not clear.
Yeah, the original brownfield site. Well, let me just pull up the site plan. So this was the brownfield site. And then this area, which is approximately 12 metres in width, was purchased by the applicant, and it was initially to be used for landscaping the site, to surround the site. It was incorporated into garden ground, and then there was a retrospective application submitted and approved for that area to be incorporated into garden ground. Perhaps, yeah, that's just showing the applicant's ownership there. But so that strip was not part of the original brownfield site. It was subsequently, in 2023 application, approved as garden ground.
Thank you.
That's sort of where my question was coming from originally, because if that is sort of noted as garden ground, why is that potential plot marked as greenbelt? That's what I'm struggling with at the moment.
Well, they're houses within the greenbelt, in the same way that any house within the greenbelt would be considered.
Okay, thank you. Just in terms of sustainable transport, there's been various discussions regarding sort of footpath linking in. Just wanted to get a wee bit of a clarification around where we currently are with that. Are we looking at a footpath solely outside onto Granite Hill Terrace, or has there been discussions of linking something right the way back into Pursley Roundabout?
Yeah, I mean, the application includes that footpath outside the house. The statements do mention linking this footpath. And the stance that the case officer took on that was that it wasn't really, for one house, it wasn't really a sort of justifiable condition to require that footpath all the way to the roundabout, and there weren't sufficient details to be sure that that could be included.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions, members? Councillor Cook.
Yeah, sorry, can I just follow up on the footpath question? Because my reading of the papers was that it wasn't that there was a condition being talked about. It was that the applicant was voluntarily saying that they'd put a footpath in. Am I right on that?
I think the case officer probably noted whether or not it could be conditioned, but yes, the applicant could voluntarily put the footpath in. it was felt that it wouldn't be justified to condition it. There weren't sufficient details.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions for Ms. Green? Nope. So in accordance with the procedural note circulated, the local review body will now discuss and decide the manner in which the review is to proceed. I would highlight that all representations relating to the case have been considered and taken into account. Determination, members. Who wants to come in?
Oh, I'll start if you want.
Yeah.
I think there's potentially been overdevelopment of the original application, and hence we've had to take more land from the green belt to kind of give that garden space for the existing houses. I mean, I think just looking at it symmetrically, for me, it's not particularly offensive to have this house there. I can understand why we don't want to encourage any encroachment into the green belt, but given there's already been an approval given to put in that additional 12 meters, you know, I'm kind of swaying that. Is it really that unacceptable? Given Rhodes haven't objected, there's been no objections from any of the other residents immediately adjacent to it. But equally, if there's a condition on the application or previous applications that site should be turned over to green space for amenity, you know, that was where I kind of was struggling to justify ignoring that condition. So I'm happy to hear what other people think.
Councillor MacDonald?
I'm uncomfortable that there's been a sort of planning creep on this particular site, and you know, I have sympathy with the reason for perhaps wanting this to be a home for someone, but I don't particularly. I think there are questions marks around the design and how it's viewed on that site coming in on Granite Hill Terrace. So I'm probably swaying unless, you know, my mind has changed to. But it's a difficult one to go with the original decision that was made by the planning officer.
Thank you. Councillor Cook?
Yeah, this is probably not going to be terribly helpful because I'm swithering on this one. I think it's far from straightforward. I get where the officer's coming from in the reasoning, particularly around the green belt. I'm not particularly persuaded by the apparent problem with sustainable active travel on the grounds that in a location like that, it's not like in Torry or the West End or somewhere. You wouldn't be expecting people to walk and cycle and stuff necessarily in somewhere like that. Yeah, the Greenbelt policy worries me in the sense that I'm struggling to see how we could approve it given the Greenbelt policy. On the other hand, I've got a degree of sympathy for the applicant. So as I say, sorry, that's probably not very helpful at all.
Yeah, I get where people are coming from in this one. The way I'm sort of looking at it is, you know, there was an original plan around the previous LDPs in terms of OP13, and this was effectively a lorry yard and a brownfield site, and everything was got bringing back into use. Looking at this little plot here and what it currently is in terms of that little bit of green space, green belt land, would that plot potentially complete that site, and then there's no further development? There wouldn't be any scope for further development on that land, and that's that sort of completeness of that area is where I'm looking at this at the moment. But that condition, previous conditions on the green belt, is sort of a niggle there. But they have expanded the site for garden space, and that then finishes that plot. So yeah, so it is a difficult one. Councillor Lawrence, you have anything?
Yeah, I'm along with everybody else. The fact that there was the permission given for a bigger development, and it's the little strip of green belt that's being used for the garden. I'm struggling to see why it was allowed for one development with more houses, and it's being refused for the fewer, just a single house. But I'm happy to listen to what everybody says.
Can I just add, yeah, just a bit. I mean, I think that the reason I was trying to get to the point about the condition that was put on the previous application is if it hasn't been enforced and it's been, it's laid over for some period where there's no trees, because maybe if we could see the photograph again, it would give us maybe a bit of help to understand the context again. Mrs. Green could bring that up.
Yes, that's the Google Maps photograph.
Uh-huh.
The overhead. Is that the one?
Yeah, and there was one, was it looking at a bit closer? Was there another one?
Is that Street View potentially?
Yeah.
That's the one there.
Yeah, that's the one I was looking for. And is that reasonably recent, Lucy? That photograph? Because I know sometimes the photographs can be quite dated, but
I haven't included the date. Let me just 22.
okay, so it's just to know if somebody had planted a load of trees there that was part of the condition, but if they haven't, and it's sitting like that. Can you just move it again so I can see the farmhouse or flat house? Okay. I think if the farmhouse hadn't been developed, it probably would have then left the other houses sitting nicely back from the road. I'm just again back to that symmetry thing. If there was one and it's got the same facing direction as the flatted property, is that correct? Is that my recollection right?
Faces the street with a gable.
But can I see a picture? Sorry. Right, so the bit that faces the street is that the southwest elevation? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a side door is the main entrance.
Yes.
Yeah, but it kind of. Now can I see that street view again picture? Sorry, I don't want to try and get it in context. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald?
Yeah, I think that was partly my point, was that having that gable end maybe went with the house to the north a bit, but it wouldn't look, it didn't appear that it would look in that setting like that. And I think my overall, I think if the whole thing had a vision and had been built to plan, there was going to be far less housing there. There's now, because of the flats, as Councillor Bolton said just there, there's just far more people, far more houses on that site than were initially envisaged when it was a brownfield site and was made into a small development. And I just think that green space at the front of the development is enhances it, and I think it would be overdevelopment. So I would be I'm even having tried to picture the gable end there, I'm thinking more more inclined to agree with the officer.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to enter in, or are we happy to go to voting on this one? Okay, I think I would be proposing the potential for overturning the officer's recommendations on this one. I think looking at this site in terms of that small strip of greenbelt, or houses within that greenbelt environment, as this was noted as a previous opportunity site, I think that the addition of this, what looks like a little cottage, 1.5 story, adds to the completeness of that site, and that just finishes off that section there. And although we're not discussing the as per the email that came out this morning, that sort of is in the mind, although it's not material planning considerations off the back of that. So therefore, I would be content to allow this one to go ahead. I think the reasons in terms of sustainability or sustainable transport, as this is a fairly rural location on the outskirts of Aberdeen, I'm not really taking that one into consideration here. There's no bus routes along there. I'm not expecting people to walk along that lane to this property. So yeah, I'm fairly content with that. Then I would be proposing to overturn. I'll just go to Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, convener. No, I think in the principle of development being contrary to our Greenbelt policy, and I am not persuaded that the mitigations that have been asked to overturn that, the exemptions, in this case, warrant doing that. I do think I'm not so keen on the orientation of the plot anyway, in the house itself anyway. So I would be not overturning this and going with the original decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, on balance, and it is on balance, I'm with you, convener. I think I would be minded to approve.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one, because I don't like when we do encroach into the green belt when that's not what's been approved. However, there is a grouping of housing here. There's ones across the road from it. And my understanding is there's going to be a strip of sort of trees and that along the side of it. If that could be conditioned and actually followed through on to make sure that it does happen, I would be, looking at it with a view to approving it. It is very, very close, but I do feel that it would have been better to have a whole master plan for the site, but we are where we are, and I think that to put that with and to have some greenery growing up the side of it, I think will make it blend in a bit better than it currently does, actually. And if you have a barn, which would have been traditional with a farmhouse, it was often the gable end that faced the road. I mean, I know we're not talking about a barn, but I think given the kind of the weights that I've tried to apply, I think on this occasion I would go with yourself, convener. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Lawrence.
Yeah, I think along with yourself, convener, the completion of that plot will give a certain symmetry to the site, and we'll finish it off. So I'm in agreement with you. I think, and that would be it. That would be the finish of the site. The plot would be completed, in my view.
Okay, thank you very much. So therefore, the local review body has therefore agreed by majority to overturn the officer recommendation. We would now consider whether any conditions should be attached to the approval of the application. Councillor Bolton, I think in terms of a landscaping plan coming back under delegated powers to officers, I'm more than happy to put that on. And that should make it sort of that edge of the site there. Does anyone have anything else they want to or wish to condition onto the site? Okay.
Can I just double check that the materials are already agreed? So
Yep.
suitable materials.
Ms. Green.
Yes, the materials are noted on the drawing. I think the other conditions I would suggest are that the access road is completed in accordance with the plan, and the bin storage, landscaping you've noted. I'll just double check my notes. Yes, it was just the works to the access.
Yep, so works to access, bin stores and landscaping. I'm all happy with those. Thank you very much. So therefore the application has been overturned. Please note a decision notice from today's meeting will be issued to the applicant or agent in the next coming days. Thank you very much. Turning to the second one we have today, so turn to consideration of the second review in respect of the decision to refuse the application for the installation of replacement dormer windows to the front, which is retrospective, at 18C Golden Square, Aberdeen, AB10 1RH, planning reference 250140. We'll now pass back again to Ms. Green, who will provide us with a brief description of the application proposal and a reminder of the reasons why the application was refused.
Okay, I'll just share this presentation. Okay, so this is a retrospective application for a dormer to the front of the building on Golden Square. The review was submitted with all the necessary information within the time limit. There are no new matters within the submissions, and in terms of procedure, the applicant expressed the view that that a site visit should take place in order to see the context of number 18C within Golden Square. So I'll proceed to provide some background to the case before handing back members to decide how to proceed. So location, I'm sure you're familiar with Golden Square, and the building is just on the corner here, on the corner of Crimmon Place. Just there. The building is category B listed, having been built between 1810 and 1821, and it's within the city centre conservation area, with the main elevation facing onto Golden Square, although the doorway is actually on the side elevation. And the surrounding area, you can see the Catholic Cathedral there to the rear. So this is the front elevation onto Golden Square. And this is how the dormers were previously, with timber windows painted white. And this is the subdivision through the panes, and also the central division for the sashes. So the windows that have been replaced with UPVC, and the sashes are divided on a 30-70 split, and they're white as well. Just done a slightly larger version of that. It's the same drawing. And some street view photographs. So this one, and I've defined with the windows before they were changed. It's these two windows. Again, just looking up from Crimmon Place. And that's with the windows having been changed. See the different subdivision.
Lucy, can you go back 2 pictures? Sorry, convener, it's just to save having to draw up. I just want to see something for a minute. The one before that, maybe. I'm just looking at the lower windows to see what's happened there as well. Okay, thank you.
So these are the existing elevations on the first and second floor plan. The dimensions of the dormer don't change, it's just the framing. So the accommodation is on the first and second floor, but it's only the windows to the window frames to the dormers that are the subject of this application. So you see the existing plan and as proposed. And then that's the detail of the window frame. In terms of planning history, there was planning permission and listed building consent for glazed sash and case replacement windows to match the previous windows, and those are the ones I believe that are in place on the building with the 50-50 split and the 2 panes over 2. And that permission was based on a window survey for the replacement of the historic windows. So the key determining factors in the case were the impact on the listed building. Wouldn't preserve the special character, and the impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area. And the reason for refusal was that modern UPVC windows don't match the design, form and fenestration pattern of the previous traditional windows or the majority of windows in Golden Square, i.e. in terms of material, the split of the sashes and the subdivision. Secondly, the adverse impact on the special character and interest of the listed building as a result, and the impact on the character of the conservation area. And therefore, that the proposal is contrary to Policy 7 on historic assets and places and 14 on design of NPF 4, the Historic Environment Policy for Scotland, and Policy D1 on quality placemaking, D6 on historic environment, and D8 windows and doors in the local development plan. And also contrary to the Aberdeen Planning Guidance repair and replacement of windows and doors, and Historic Environment Scotland managing change on windows. So Historic Environment Scotland had no objection, but did state that that was not to be taken as an indication of support. The City Centre Community Council had no comments, and there were representations from the Aberdeen Civic Society who objected to the design of the windows, stating that Golden Square is important and is a significant space in the city centre, and new windows are not consistent with the glazing pattern of the former historic windows, nor what exists elsewhere. For the applicant to summarise their statement of review, they stated that the previous timber windows were in poor state and needed replacing, and the windows were not original, they were 12 years old, approved under the application I mentioned before. They stated that UPVC was used due to the height, making it difficult to maintain. And they also state that at that height above ground level, it's difficult to differentiate between UPVC and timber, and that there's no negative impact, therefore, on the listed building or the conservation area. And they also state that there's no uniformity of windows in Golden Square in terms of split of sashes, and they submitted photographs to show that. So at this point, I will hand back to members to decide how to proceed.
Thank you very much. So again, we now need to consider whether we have sufficient information in front of us to take a decision on the application. Members, we can, if you do not feel you have sufficient information to take a decision, we can request further information to be provided, hearings to be arranged, or a site visit to be undertaken. At the moment, I'm content with the information that we've received. I'm happy to continue. We'll just go around the room. Councillor Cook.
Yep, content to continue.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, happy to continue with the information we have.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
I would concur with that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, happy to continue.
Thank you very much. Therefore, we are happy to proceed, and we'll pass back to Ms Green, who will take us through the relevant policies and procedures in relation to this review.
Okay, I'll move on to the policies. Just to also mention that the proposal is subject to a listed building consent, which was also refused, and that's been appealed to the Scottish ministers, and there hasn't been a decision on that yet. So policies in MPF4, as we know, the overriding policies of tackling climate change and nature crises and mitigation for that apply to every proposal and decision. And I'll run through the other policies on the next slides. So policy 7 relates to historic assets and states that proposals that relate to listed buildings will only be supported where they preserve its character, special architectural and historic interest and setting. And policies within the local development plan, which are fairly similar, on design and historic environment. And then we have a particular policy on windows and doors, which I'll move on to in a moment. The site's zoned within the mixed use area and in the city centre as well. And then there's the Aberdeen planning guidance on repair and replacement of windows and doors, which I'll just move on to. So the policy itself is not highly relevant other than in its reference to referring to the guidance, because these aren't historic windows. Most of the policy relates to those. So further guidance is within the APG on repair and replacement of windows and doors. And that contains this table, which looks at how we would approach applications for window replacement or repair in listed buildings or in conservation areas on unlisted buildings. So the particular ones that are relevant are if we were reinstating original types and arrangements, that would be acceptable. Timber replica and reinstatement would be acceptable. Replacing original or historic frames with UPVC would not be acceptable in listed buildings and conservation areas. And then there's this note within the guidance as well. The introduction of new PVC windows as a replacement material is not acceptable, and any variation must be fully justified, with form of existing windows within the building and immediate area taken into consideration. So I've just put in this slide, which covers both policies on design. And as we know, there are the 6 qualities, including distinctive, which relates to design, built form, and sense of place. So overall, the primacy of the development plan policies, with all applications being determined in accordance with those policies unless material considerations indicate otherwise, and each application treated on its merits. So the basis of this decision would be the impact on the character of the listed building and the conservation area, and the principle of the use of UPVC as well as the design of the frame in terms of the subdivision split of sashes and how that sits in relation to window replacement guidance. And does the proposal comply with the development plan as a whole, or other material considerations indicating otherwise? And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Just an initial question for myself. Is there any other dormer windows within Golden Square that are UPVC, or are they all traditional timber sash encasements?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because there are some modern ones. Go to Golden Square and have a look. There are different designs in different buildings. There haven't been any highlighted in the submissions.
I guess it'd be quite difficult to tell, giving construction. Councillor MacDonald?
Yeah, I suppose mine, following on from you, Convener, was more about the, rather than the actual material, was the 30-70 split rather than the 50-50 split. And when, you know, if you look at the building on the other side of Crimond, you know, again, it's still got a 50-50 with the bits. And then there are others with the rather, you know, more historic looking ones with the smaller panes. And there's it's not an even look around the square, in my view. In the way that the panes are split and the subdivision and the split of them, either in the substantive windows or in the dormer windows. But there is obviously in our planning guidance the reference to UPVC as well.
Yeah. Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, Lucy, you mentioned the window survey that was carried out. So would the individuals have been aware of what would be expected? I mean, they've also used someone to do it. So it's just to understand the level of understanding that the individuals had about putting these in when it wasn't the correct. Sorry, Karen.
That window survey was carried out for the 2013 application. So at that point, the historic or possibly original windows, but certainly historic, were surveyed and found to be sufficiently in a state of disrepair to be replaced. So that established the principle of replacing the windows. So the ones that were put in were timber, but haven't lasted very long, and are now being replaced, well, have now been replaced with UPVC. So the survey was done time ago.
So can I just check? So after the survey, the ones that they replaced it with were replicas, I suppose, of the original historic windows, whilst these are not proportionally or style the same, that they replaced for a second time.
Yeah, the replacement timber ones, as far as I know, were replicas for the original, or was certainly historically of a type that you would expect to see in terms of their material, especially.
Any other questions, members? No, not seeing any hands at this time. Okay, so where's my bit here? So in accordance with the procedural note circulated, the local review body will now discuss and decide the manner in which the review is to proceed. I would highlight that all representations relating to the case have been considered and taken into account. So we'll turn to determination, members. In my opinion, this is a pretty cut and shut episode here. Our guidance documents are quite clear in terms of timber replacement. This is a historical area of our city centre, which is under various guidance documents. It worries me that someone thought it would be acceptable to replace the nature of these windows for UPVC, and how the works went forward to replace these windows with UPVC without anyone considering, hold on a minute. It annoys me slightly that this is a retrospective planning condition. I'm not the biggest fan of retrospective planning conditions when it comes to these matters anyway in terms of our city centre. Therefore, I will be upholding the officer's recommendations, and I would hope that the applicant would reinstate the timber sash and casement construction as would be with any other property around Golden Square in the future. But I will quickly go around the room and bring everyone else in. Councillor Cook.
In general, I agree with you on retrospectives. However, when you and I know Golden Square quite well because it's I go through it when I'm on the way to the music hall or my dentist. And if you look at the photos that the applicant has submitted, there is a range of different styles of window. So it's not like one of those streets where every house is identical. So I'm minded to agree to the to approve the application, as I say, largely because you've not got every building is not the same, so there's a range of styles. I'm also mindful of the fact that one of the applicants' contentions is that because it's so high, maintaining wooden windows is harder to do because you've got to repaint them every few years, otherwise they start to rot. So there's that. And it's also the case that I can think of lots and lots of places in Rosemount where you look at a window and you think, is that UPVC or is it wood? And okay, maybe if it's on the ground floor, that's one thing. When it's up high, like these are, I find it difficult sometimes to see whether it's wood or UPVC. So I would be minded to approve the application.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cook. Councillor Bolton.
I'll be supporting you, convener. I appreciate what's been said in terms about the new PVC, and I think MB knows me. I'm quite sympathetic when it in certain areas of conservation where I think it's appropriate that you can change it to new PVC. That I will overturn decisions, but these are very historic and key elements, I think, of our historic story of the city, and I wouldn't like to. It's a thin edge of the wedge that could start a whole catalogue of things being changed, and that then does it become a conservation area or not? So I am as I say, very supportive of people being able to live in buildings appropriately, but I think when you've got something, particularly at the front in this location, and they've used somebody that knows what they're doing, so they should have known better. to put this in place. I think it was a we'll do it and then beg for forgiveness afterwards feeling for me. And new PVC, they might last in terms of not disintegrating, but they can discolor. And, in that key location, I'm just not comfortable that I could, with any good conscience, overturn this. I think we either want to have a conservation area in these key locations or we don't. And sometimes they can have different styles in a conservation area, but it's some of the key principles that have not been followed here. And for that reason, I'll be supporting you, convener. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, I think there is a responsibility for those who have these wonderful buildings to upkeep them in a particular manner, and I would be supporting you in this occasion, convener, and going with the officer recommendation.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, there is no uniformity in the dormers, so that explains why the windows are not identical around the whole of the square. And this is a conservation area, and it's a thin end of the wedge if we start moving away from conservation. And I think it's a historic square in the city, and I agree with you, convener. We should uphold the officer's decision.
Thank you very much. So therefore, the local review body has therefore agreed to, by a majority, uphold the decisions of the appointed officer, and the application is therefore refused. Please note that the decision of today's LRB will be sent out to the planning advisor or the applicant or agents in the forthcoming days. Thank you very much. Councillor Cook, I believe you are departing us for this last review, as this one is in your electoral ward. So
yep, that is correct. It's it's right on the boundary, but it's still within the ward, so can't do this one.
That's great. Thanks very much for your attendance today, Councillor Cook.
Cheerio.
Thank you. So, turning to consideration of the third review in respect of the decision to refuse the application of the formation of a car park at the James Hutton Institute, Countess Wells Road, Aberdeen, AB 158QH, planning reference 241146, and will again pass back to Ms Green, the planning advisor in attendance, who will take us through the application and provide us with a brief description of the proposals and a reminder and reasons why the application was refused.
Convener, just before you do that, can I?
Yes.
I don't know if you take transparency statements at LRB, but I do. It's not in the ward I represent, but I do live fairly close by. I just wanted to make that clear, but I don't feel that I need to be compromised and not take part in the meeting.
That's fine. Transparency statement noted. Thank you very much. Ms Green.
Thank you. Hopefully you can see that. So this review is into the formation of a car park at the James Hutton Institute on Countess Wells Road. And the review was submitted with all the necessary information within the time limit. The applicant has indicated that there are no new matters within the submissions. And in terms of procedure, they're content to proceed on the basis of the documents. So I'll continue to provide some background information before handing back for members to decide how to proceed. So this is the site plan. Countess Wells Road down at the bottom, and then this is Macaulay Drive coming through, and the main James Hutton Institute here. The application site just here, and this is the Scout Hut as mentioned. And this is used for storage for the James Hutton Institute. And this is the first-class nursery that's mentioned in the submissions. And also the access road is reference to the application for access road and car park, and that's this one here, providing direct access from Countess Wells Road to the main building. So overhead, that's just showing the site as I mentioned. So yes, the site is up here. And you can see that it's largely been laid out for parking there. It's just at the top. I put this slide in really so you could see it in the context of the Institute and the access road that's been put in, and then Macaulay Drive leading up. So I've got some more photographs a bit closer in. And that's the site plan. So this is Macaulay Drive, the access from Macaulay Drive coming in, and then the parking area. And this is taken from the top corner of the site. See 2022. So the parking area would be within this area here. And the wall is just along underneath the red line, this stone wall that would be within that area. And this is taken from the south. So you would go in through here and access the parking. There, that's taken an aerial photo from Google with the parking laid out there. Is that the plan actually shows parking zone all the way up to the wall, as well as within this area. This skirts the edge of this building. And that's taken from the east. And I've just tried to highlight the site in highlighter. I've actually done it incorrectly there. It goes along the wall.
Sorry, can you just point where they were accessing that site? Because it looked like they were going to be coming along a path from what you said earlier. So where are they actually coming in? In there?
They're coming in here alongside the building. You can go back to the I think there's that gap.
I think it might have been the previous photograph where it showed the entrance to that there.
Yeah.
That one. So they're going up that path there.
That path.
It's going to become a road.
Would be that. So, whereas this area indicating for the access is between the corner of that building and the path. So this strip here is which is grass at the moment.
The path remains a path. All right, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, you can't really see it on there because it's too far away. So in terms of consultations, the roads team objected as the proposal is a standalone car park unrelated to development. It's created as a temporary measure while works were completed for the access road and car park that I referred to before, which has been implemented. The permission for the access and parking was granted recently, and they state that any future development should consider and evidence parking needs across the site. Transport policies encourage sustainable travel rather than private vehicle trips. And the applicant's statements that the proposal does not generate traffic and that the proposed car park would directly support the new hub make it unclear. They're unclear how both those statements are the case. The Craigie, Butler and Seafield Community Council have also objected, and they've stated that the car park was formed without permission and is not linked to any new development, and so is contrary to policy T3 on parking, which is reason enough to justify refusal. They state that the recent permission for access from Countess Wells Road was to remove traffic from Macaulay Drive, and this car park, if made permanent by this permission, would increase traffic on Macaulay Drive. They also state that Macaulay Drive is a residential area and an increase in traffic is a safety issue, and there'd also be an increase in noise and pollution. And the glare of car park lighting would have a negative impact on people and wildlife. And it would encourage traffic in terms of private car travel instead of sustainable travel. And they state that the car park is an eyesore, that the site should be restored to green space, and that any car parking required for future demand should be accessed via Countess Wells Road. There were also two objections, and they stated that additional car park is not necessary because the Institute has a car park which is more suitable with direct access from Countess Wells Road. That residents are against the use of Macaulay Drive for access as it's residential and is used by children and dog walkers. They state that the site is an eyesore and it creates noise and pollution, and that there's an adverse impact on wildlife due to the car park, and that the site is not suitable for that use. They also state that it previously contained trees, and the development's contrary to the ethos of the Institute and the Biodiversity Action Plan, which has stated tree monitoring programme, and that the area should be returned to its former condition. I'll just also mention the planning history, which is noted in the report of handling. So in 2023 was approved a change of use to nursery at the Cunningham building, which I pointed out before, and that's been implemented. Then there's the application for the new access road from Countess Wells Road to the Institute, which has also been implemented. There was first application for a conferencing area and an extension to the main Institute building. That permission remains extant. But then this 2024 application for a single story link extension was a variation of the 2023 one, and that has started. There's also enforcement action which is currently paused in relation to the formation of the car park. That's the subject of this review. So in terms of the decision, the key determining factors noted within the report of handling are tackling the climate crisis and giving significant weight to that in accordance with policy 1 of NPF 4, forming the car park that's not linked to any new development, which would increase the use of cars and not public transport, walking and cycling, etc. There's the principle of a development that supports the James Hutton Institute and the Just Transition Hub. The Just Transition Hub is incorporated into the James Hutton Institute via those two applications for extensions that I mentioned. Finally, the impact on open space and biodiversity and the character and visual amenity of the area. So the reason for refusal states that the proposal is unacceptable due to the car park being on open space and not associated with new development, and is contrary to giving significant weight to the climate and nature crisis, and conflicts also with policy 2 on climate mitigation, which requires siting and design to minimise emissions. Also, that there's insufficient evidence that the car park is needed to address existing or future requirements, and that encourages car travel and not sustainable options, and is therefore contrary to policies T3 on parking, T2 on sustainable travel, and policy 13, also on sustainable travel. Stated that the car park results in the loss of open space in terms of amenity, biodiversity and landscaping, and it conflicts with policy 20 on green and blue infrastructure, and also policy NE2, which was also green and blue infrastructure. Although the area is not particularly prominent within the wider area, the use of hardcore with no soft or hard landscaping conflicts with policies on design and landscape design. And finally, biodiversity enhancements in the wider area wouldn't offset the loss of the car park as open space. And a summary of the applicant's statement is that the application of policies on the climate and nature crises, policy 1 and mitigation policy 2 is disproportionate. NPF 4 should be considered as a whole. It's stated that a rigid stance has been taken on the sustainable travel policies and parking policies, that there are benefits for the public of the proposal, and the car park would provide parking for dog walkers, the nursery and the scout hut, as well as an overflow for events at the Just Transition Hub. States that the car park would prevent on-street parking within nearby residential areas, and also that the area has not been used as open space or for public amenity. It was used previously for storage by James Hutton Institute, and it's inconspicuous within the wider area. They state also that landscaping and biodiversity measures could be incorporated, and that the site was used for temporary parking during the access road development and also used by the community during that time. So at that point, I will hand back for members to decide how to proceed.
Thank you very much. We now need to consider we have sufficient information in front of us to take a decision. If we do not feel we have sufficient information, we can request further written information be provided, hearings to be arranged, or a site visit to be undertaken. At the moment, I'm relatively content to continue given the information we have, but we'll go around the room. Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, I think we have sufficient information to take a decision today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
I would agree with that too.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm happy to continue.
Okay, thank you very much. As members feel we have sufficient information, we'll now pass back to Ms Green, who will take us through the relevant policies and considerations for this review.
So I'll just move on to the policies. So these are the relevant policies for determination of the application. As we know, policies 1 and 2 on tackling the climate and nature crises and climate mitigation are applied to every proposal, and decision should be taken through those lenses with significant weight being given to those matters. And policy 3 seeks biodiversity enhancement for all proposals. Policy 13 I will look at in the next slide. And in terms of policy 14, in particular, in terms of the 6 qualities, I've just highlighted design for healthy lifestyles through access to nature. And policy 20 also relates to open space for communities. So policy 13, the overall policy intent is to encourage developments that prioritise walking, wheeling, cycling, public transport, etc., and reduce the need to travel unsustainably. And policy D, paragraph D, of that policy, proposals for significant travel generating uses will not be supported in locations which would increase reliance on the private car, taking into account the characteristics of the area. The local development plan policies. Just show you the next slide first. This is the zoning from the local development plan. So this is the Community Facilities Policy CF1, which covers the James Hutton Institute area. And this is the site here within that. To the north, that's urban green space with green space network. And the dashed line is core path. And then this is the footpaths overlay, the purple lines. So with that in mind, just going back to the policies. CF1 relates to existing community facilities, and that's the zoning policy. Policy 1 on quality placemaking and design, and policy 2 on amenity. The visual impact of the area would be relevant to those two policies, and also D5 on landscape design. So proposals should be designed with effective landscape frameworks integrated into the layout, ensuring a sense of place and mitigating negative visual impacts. And policy NE2 on green and blue infrastructure, that deals with the open space. And then policy T2 on sustainable transport and parking, I'll come to in a moment. There's also mentioned within the submissions of the Craigie Buckler planning brief, that's not a adopted planning document in terms of those currently adopted in connection with the local development plan, but it existed in 2005 for the development of the site at that time. So just looking at the policy T2, which is similar to the policy in NPF4, proportionate to the scale and anticipated impacts, new developments must demonstrate that sufficient measures have been taken to minimise traffic generated. And then there's also paragraph 11.24, where the council recognises that parking is an essential facility for many developments, but will ensure that the levels of parking complement its commitment to sustainable transport through reducing emissions and congestion. And then from policy T3, proposals for car parking that are not directly related to new developments will not be supported. And policy T3 also sets out parking requirements for new developments, which is supported by the transport and accessibility guidance. And that states that over provision of parking can reduce travel by alternative forms of transport through the promotion of car use, resulting in worsening of congestion and air quality problems. And this is from the green and blue infrastructure policy. And it refers to all areas, including smaller spaces not identified on the proposal's maps as urban green space. So, and states that will protect and support the city's urban green space. And the site's also included in the open space audit 2024, and highlights the level of use as high and medium for the two. For the northern, I think, was high use, and the southern area was part of the wider area that's in medium use, and it's categorised as public park or garden for the northern area and amenity green space for the area south of the wall. And this is looking at design policies, which obviously seeks high quality design with an overall improvement to the quality of the area. And so finally, evaluation in terms of the development plan policies. and their primacy, with all developments being determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise, and each being treated on its merits. So the basis of the decision in this instance would be loss of amenity and open space, sustainable transport, and the question of whether this encourages the private car use, and the weight to be given to climate change and nature crisis and mitigation, and policy T3 on parking, where that's unconnected to new development. So overall, does the proposal comply with the development plan as a whole, or other material considerations weighing for or against? And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Councillor MacDonald.
Any idea, Ms. Green, on the time that the photographs were taken of the car park? I mean, I did a quick tot up of 48 cars that were there. And is there flow? Do we know? Has there been any survey done of comings and goings? Has there been any roads put down the black lines to count comings and goings from the nursery rather than just car park for workers?
I haven't seen any evidence of any surveys of parking numbers taking place. I can check the date of the overhead photographs. Just a moment. I think it's 22, but because obviously it was used temporarily while the road and car park were constructed to the main institute. So that would have been the reason it was in place at that time. I'm not saying 2025 at the bottom, but so that's accurate.
So that's after the Countess Wells Road was open yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that was 22 when it wasn't developed.
Can you bring it up, that thing you just had up, Lucy, before the picture? I don't know if it was Google Maps or something. You have the car park as it is at the moment. Just a picture before this one. Yeah. So can you point to, I know the Scout Hut seems to, I think, have its own parking at the front. And the nursery, which building was the nursery again?
That's here.
And it's got its own parking. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to double check.
Thank you. Any further questions on this one?
Just one, and I don't know if you can answer it because it's not a direct question about the specific site we're developing, but the access road, would people be able to park on that, or is that, it's just that, given there's those cars there, what I don't want then is by saying, no, you can't have that, it then is pushing the cars onto the adjoining road network, the houses and the lead up road. I don't know if there's any restrictions on that. So it's about just making sure we don't inadvertently cause a bigger problem.
As in Macaulay Drive itself?
Yeah,
Yeah, is there any yellow lines along there? I'm not actually too sure. It's been a while since I was along there.
I don't think, Sandra saying no. I didn't think there was, and what I don't want to do is to push the problem elsewhere.
I mean, the submissions say that it's not within a controlled parking.
No, so there's no double yellows. Okay. All right, thank you.
Councillor Lawrence, I had your hand there. You want to come in?
Yeah, it's just it's on sustainable transport. What's the bus service like up to that area? Do we know?
I think of my memory, it would be along Countess Wells Road. I'm not too sure if anything turns up towards Macaulay Drive, but it does go along the bottom of the road.
Yeah, the buses, the main buses are at the Seafield shops, and then one does come down past the library onto Creighton Road, and then comes round, and you can get off on Area Hall Drive to go to Hutton. But I mean, that pavement is well used as well with people. I think my question was around the Hutton itself. Does it have a sustainable travel policy for its staff, but also for its activities as a just transition hub? And my feeling is it probably does have. I'd be astonished if it didn't have something along those lines.
I think there was something came at the last when we had this last application. Yeah,
I vaguely remember something being submitted at the time that showed that.
And the public engagement that they did do, about the road and the applications that were going to go forward, and there was some. There was very good public engagement with the local community and wider. I think there's also been an impact, if I'm being honest, around the building of the houses close by, and the trees that have come down around the old Hilton treetop site, because it's adjacent to it's just I think one of your pictures showed the cleared site. Lucy, so it's there are impacts on the diversity of the area that are see there it's really it's close enough to have an impact, I think, but it's not in the boundary of what we're looking at today. But certainly that Cooper's Pond, I know, has been subject to a lot of concern at not being what it was because of runoff and whatnot. Climate change probably as well.
Any further questions? I just see Lucy popped it up there regarding the Green Travel Plan. Any
Thank
further
you.
questions on this application? Are we happy to go to determination? Okay, so in accordance with the procedural note circulated, the local review body will now discuss and decide the manner in which reviews proceed. I would highlight that all representations related to the case have been considered and taken into account. Happy to open the floor. I would say my initial thoughts was they have just had application approved for quite an extensive parking arrangements there. If they believed at the time that they required more, then potentially should have made that car park slightly larger than what was proposed. I also note that in some of the submissions, the nursery staff note that there's a team of 40 staff and nearly all staff drives, therefore they require parking. But yet the James Hutton Institute themselves does note in their supplementary paperwork that this would only be used as intermittent overflow for any large scale events, so therefore it can't be both, is my concern on that. So are we going to be using this as day to day, or is it going to be intermittent? There seems to be a conflict of the submissions in terms of the supporting applications and what's been noted by the roads department here, but I'm happy for somebody else to come in with anything further. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, I think partly because of the car park on what was open space and not associated with a new development, I think is quite compelling. That we in our policies we say we will not support it, and also I think from a sustainable travel point of view for an organisation, I haven't read the document, but who are all about just transition and climate change, I would not be supporting this application today, convener.
I think as well as this being a temporary site as well for the use of construction vehicles and lay down areas for the new car park, and then all of a sudden this has been turned into additional parking without approval, when it should have probably been returned back to the state that it was before being used as that temporary parking. Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, my only concern was displacement of cars onto the network around the housing, because that can raise in its own a number of safety issues. But I think we've heard from the Community Council that they have a concern, and certainly, I wouldn't want to see that become the norm. So I think you said it yourself, convener, and I think Councillor McDonald alluded to it. This is about, we've had a previous application where we did consider the parking, and I think perhaps the Institute should have thought more carefully then. And I would, it's not from, I'm not quite as kind of pushing everybody on their bikes and on their buses, but I think it's, for me, it is about the safety and the fact that we have created a new entrance to try, and the reason for that, other than to make it a nice entrance, was on a safety ground, so you can't have your cake and eat it. So I would be upholding the officer's recommendation on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lawrence.
Yeah, I would agree with what's been said. I think it's a case of they've had this extra parking for a wee while and decided it's maybe a better idea. But as you said, convener, they should have looked at that when they made the original application to increase it. And there was a lot of discussion around that at the time as well. I remember the meeting. So I would agree with what everybody else is saying.
Thank you very much. Therefore, we're all in agreement with that one. Therefore, the local review body has therefore agreed to unanimously uphold the decision of the appointed officer, and therefore the application is refused. Thank you very much, members. That brings us to the end of today's LRB. Thank you very much for all your attendance, and we will see you at the next one, and those we will see you at planning's meeting on Thursday. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.